All right, welcome back to the Flipping Junkie podcast. I've got Mike Simmons. If you've been listening to the podcast any length of times, Mike has been on about 20, 25 times. No, not really. He's probably been on maybe 3 times, I think, too. But it's because he's got a wealth of knowledge. He's been in this business, started in 2008 with flipping, transitioned in 2014 to doing wholesaling. And he was actually pretty instrumental in helping me to take my business from where it was my ex-wife and I just doing everything in the business, feeling like we're on this hamster wheel or this track running as fast as we can, and we just had to run faster to be able to make it to some place of freedom and rest, but by running faster, which doesn't work, and we didn't see it. But Mike was pretty instrumental in the group that we were in that was helping to show that we were capable of transforming our business in a way that would provide that freedom. And so we're going to get into that. I'm super excited about that. Hey, welcome to the show, Mike.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It's great to be back. I was going to say, if I had been on the show 20 times, there's a lot of repeats, a lot of replays that you're doing. You're cheating. You're throwing replays. No, yeah, it's been 2 or 3 times, and I appreciate you having me on again, man. I really do.
Cool. Well, I have you on because I like you a lot. I always enjoy talking to you. First, I guess before we jump into the meat of this, you were talking about this opportunity, and I want everybody out there listening to know about this. So if you wouldn't mind, could you mind sharing your new thing that your new lending that you're working on?
Not at all. So one thing that I have seen consistently since I started in real estate in 2008, it's not changed at all. I mean, it varies in the way it's presented, but it hasn't changed, is that people need money. People are always looking for money. They're looking for better options. And a lot of times they're looking for cheaper options. But the reality is what I've seen, what I've observed over the years is that real estate investors are always looking to do better financially and find cheaper rates. But more importantly, we want to be able to focus on what's really important, and that's finding deals, closing deals, and making money. And so, and I lived this too. I know that the rate that I pay for money is secondary to how much hassle it takes to get that. So my goal here, and I started a lending company. And my goal was to create something that is unique in the industry, and that is a lending company that 100% focuses on simplicity, efficiency, and the lowest level of hassle humanly possible. And if I can achieve that, I'm sure that I can be a gazillionaire, because that is the thing that I think a lot of companies struggle with. They create so many hassles and hurdles that it's almost a deterrent. You just don't want to do it. You don't want to deal with it anymore. So I've created a company. It's called Blitz Our Capital, BLITZAR Capital. You can go to blitzourcapital.com. And what you're referencing is I'm not necessarily pushing people to use me as their lending company. You certainly can. You can reach out and you can fill an application. But the opportunity here is really for people to get involved and buy into the company as an investor. That's what I'm really looking for. I think we are going to reset the standard for lending companies inside of real estate. I really do, because as a real estate investor for the last 13 years, I know what's missing, and I know that most lending companies completely miss the mark. They don't understand what it is that's frustrating about their company to their borrowers. But I've been on the other side of the fence so long that I do. And so I really believe that we have an opportunity for explosive growth, and I'm bringing on investors now. The only caveat to that is you have to be accredited, because we're a 506c and we're openly soliciting investors like I'm doing right now. And so the SEC says you can do that, but they have to be accredited. And you can look that up. If you're not sure if you're accredited, you may not be, but you can look it up and just see if you qualify. But if that's something that interests folks, reach out to me. You can reach out directly at Simmons, which is my last name, SIMMONS, at blitzourcapital.com, and let me know you're interested and want more information. I'd be happy to talk to you. So that's my 2-second opportunity plug there.
All right, cool. And I let you do that. And I don't typically do that on shows, but Mike, I just feel like I've learned so much from you in the past, and what you're doing and what you do and who you are as a person. I've got no problem with anything that, helping you with anything that you do like that. And, if you guys have an opportunity even to talk with Mike, I know that you're going to benefit from just having the conversation. So, that's awesome. All right, cool. Let's get into an actual conversation too. So people can
okay, cool.
Yeah, it's really cool though what you got going there, and making that something that's really going to change the industry is really exciting to hear about it. Moving into talking about, going from that place of taking a call on Friday at 5 p.m. when you're already kind of stepping into the weekend mentally, and you're like, I want to be with my family. I've been working this flipping business all week long, working some long days and stuff like that. And now I got this call and this person's motivated.
Mm-hmm.
I've got to go and do that. And it's the last thing I want to do.
Yep.
Were you in that place before?
100%. And worse, I was in that place, but I am not a great salesperson. That is not my strength. And so what I would do more often, this is, I'm ashamed to admit it, but honestly, I'm sure that there are people listening, I'll be in good company here, that I would get that call on a Friday and I wouldn't take it, because not only am I not great at it, not only is it Friday, because I hated taking calls personally, because I'm bad at it kind of, I would avoid it, right? So I would have made excuses like, oh, it's Friday, like, it's just a tough time, like nobody really wants to talk. So I would put it off until Monday. And then you know what happens when you don't answer the call, you let it go to voicemail or whatever. You call them on Monday, they don't answer, you leave a voicemail, then they call you back and you don't answer. And pretty soon you're playing phone tag and you lose the deal, because some other investor who's actually smart and they're taking calls when they should be taking calls, they get the deal. And that was happening to me. I just would avoid the calls. If I had any reason at all to not take a call, I would let it go to voicemail. And that's absolutely ridiculous and not the way you build a business.
Yeah. How long were you in the business before you brought somebody on to even do, like, take calls or do acquisitions? Like what was that like?
Too long. But I will say it was too long. It was about 6 years. But honestly, for the first 4 years, I wasn't doing marketing. So I was buying all my deals off the MLS. And so it wasn't the same situation. So I probably, for about one solid year, I was the person when I was doing marketing, taking calls and doing all that myself. So I did it for about a year before I hired somebody. And boy, what a difference it makes, because I stopped caring about, I honestly, there was like this push and pull. I didn't really want the phone to ring because I really didn't want to have to answer it. So I would do less marketing so the phone wouldn't ring as much.
Oh man.
And so when I hired someone who that was their superpower, like they were great at sales, I realized, oh my gosh, this is great. I'm going to do more marketing because I want the phone to ring now. It was like this real, almost self-sabotaging because I was not good at it. And I always tell people, if you don't know what to hire for in your company, and you maybe should start thinking about hiring, but you don't know what, be honest with yourself about what you really dislike doing, because it's probably what's not being done well. And it's probably creating a bottleneck because you don't like it. You're not good at it. And so human nature, you're going to avoid it a little bit. And so that's probably where you should be looking to hire first. And that's what I did.
Oh, nice. So what did it take for you to be, I mean, you said that were doing deals for six years or more before you got to the point where you at a place where you're bringing somebody on. And I know that you do coaching as well. And so I want to know from your perspective, or from people that you've worked with, what is the thing keeping people that you've noticed, if you've noticed any trend in that, what is the thing that keeps people from being at a place where that's something that they should consider doing?
Yeah. I mean, the super, super high level answer is fear. It's always fear-based, but the fear usually revolves around, they don't feel like their company is big enough to justify bringing on, I'm doing air quotes, employees, right? People they have to pay. And they're really nervous about people relying on them to pay their mortgage and to buy food for their family. And so, but I did the same thing. It's a circular logic that you get into. It's really crazy because for me, and I see this in other people, I would say to myself, I can't hire because I'm not a big enough company who am I? Like, I'm a small, little, tiny nothing. Like, I'm not big enough to hire, but I was running around and I was stretching myself so thin that I was too small to hire, but I would never get any bigger unless I hired and took some of that work off my plate. So if you find yourself like saying, like, I'm just not big enough, I need to be a bigger company, but yet you're working 18 hours a day and there's really not much more you can do, you have to bring people in order to take things off your plate so that you can grow. And I think it's a real safety. It's a feeling of safety for some people because they're doing things that are below their pay grade. And I don't mean anything in your company is degrading or you shouldn't have to do it because you're too great, but there are things that you can hire out that you could spend your time much better if someone else was doing those things. But because you've been doing them so long and you've built this little company on your own, sometimes you're good at it even sometimes. So it becomes the safety blanket for you. Like, oh, I have to take these calls and I have to run the numbers and I have to I have to go to Home Depot and get more supplies because you've always done it. And it's a sense of safety and you feel like you're doing something. But the reality is you shouldn't be doing any of those things as the owner, as the head of this company. If you're a house flipper, for example, my mantra has always been, if you're a house flipper, you have two main pillar responsibilities that you need to always worry about. And that's driving more leads into your company or making sure they're being driven and raising better, cheaper money. And if you have an abundance of great leads and an abundance of really great money that's inexpensive, the sky's the limit as a house flipper, right? But we get bogged down in the details like, oh, well, this house, the contractor's sick, and this one, they need more supply, and blah, blah, blah. I need to call Home Depot and verify the purchase, like all these things that somebody else can do in your company. And they're not really moving the needle for you. They're just keeping you busy for 10 hours a day. But really, if you spent those 10 hours figuring out how to drive better, cheaper leads and raising cheaper money and more money, everything in between can be hired out and you can blow up and frankly, not work yourself to death.
Yeah, I was thinking that because sometimes it's not really the aspiration of some people to do 100 plus deals a year. I mean,
Yep.
What this creates is the time that you can take off. You could go on vacation
Totally.
and not have the phone call come in and feel guilty about not being able to go to the appointment right away, like you're going to lose the deal.
Totally.
Because you've
Yep.
got
And
it all.
there's something between 0 employees and 10 employees, right? You can hire like an assistant who can take some things off your plate that keep you busy, but don't necessarily make you a ton of money. Like you can bring in one person, part-time at first. You don't have to hire 5 people day one. And I think people have a hard time with that mental leap. Like one person part-time, and even if it's like, and I'm not necessarily advocating this, but it works for a lot of people, even like a VA, like somebody overseas part-time. Like, do you have any idea? Most people have no idea how inexpensively they can find someone to take menial tasks off their plate at like less than they would spend to go to the movies with their family a month. Like you can do it. It's not that daunting. And really, my guess is for most people who don't have anybody and they're trying to, build their business a little bit, is most of the time that they're spending in their business would be better served if somebody else was doing it for them. Most of what they're doing, not everything, but most of what they're doing.
Yeah, that had to get beaten into my head. I mean, it wasn't something I accepted at all right away. I mean, you guys
Nobody does.
you and Justin both had to say, I know you think that you're like the best acquisitions person in the world, but you're not doing it as well as you can be because you've got all these other things that you're doing.
It's hard, man. It's hard. We talked a minute ago here when I was on your podcast, but how there's really 2 levels that you have to go through when it comes to like, or when you're on my podcast, I should have said, there's 2 levels. Like the first level is like getting the nerve to start something, like just getting out there and like starting your business. That takes a lot of nerve and a lot of bravery and all that. But the next level is like, what does it take to pull myself out of the doing everything and create a company that has some efficiencies and there's people who are doing things and I'm not doing everything. Like that's a whole different level. And I think a lot of people who start their business because they have done everything, they've gotten pretty good, if not great at parts of their business. And to give that up and to do something that is a little bit scary and a little bit unfamiliar, that's a whole different level of commitment that a lot of people resist because they built this thing.
Oh, absolutely. And let's look at a belief I think that I know I had, and I'm thinking that a lot of people that haven't made that transition have, of I don't have a business background.
Yeah.
And when I worked for a business, I was a lousy employee.
So was that.
So I felt like I had no bearing on what is right, what's wrong, how to handle all of this stuff. And it's like, it scared me to death to hire somebody because like, how am I supposed to manage this? I don't know what I'm supposed to do. If, and it's like, well, I'll just hire them and they can shadow me and they'll learn.
Yeah.
Talk about that if you would. Like, what are the pros and cons of that? What's the better way to do it?
The pros are, for you as the owner who kind of does everything, it sounds a lot easier than coming up with some kind of a training plan for this person. The problem is the way a lot of us work, it's a little scattershot, it's not super organized, and we're not always fantastic at explaining what we're doing. We're just doing it, and there's a lot involved in why we're doing it that way. So I think the biggest thing is, you start someone in your company. This is what I did all the time. And I think some of us are guilty of this. I'm not a super detailed person. So for me to come up with a training plan for somebody sounds like legit torture. Like, what would happen if I was caught behind enemy lines? They would say, I need you to come up with a training manual, right? Like, that would be the worst thing. So I think what happens is, as entrepreneurs with very limited detail and a lot of anxiety about getting things done, is, and I did this, I would bring someone to my company who on paper, sort of knows what they're doing and they're good at what they do. And I would say, I'd basically give them the ball and I'd go, there's the goal line. Just get there. I don't even care how you get there. Just get there. Like, hurry up and get there. And there's an awful lot that's left unsaid when you just tell them the goal, the expected outcome, and you don't give them any of the process in between. And it's all in your head. So it's very difficult to relay that to somebody. So what's daunting for a lot of us is, well, I don't want to create a training manual. Like, who has time for that? You said do things that are high level, that I'm actually making money. And it goes back to, there's a book called Procrastinate on Purpose. And it's about things that are important and things that are significant in your business. Things that are important, like you have to pay a bill, right, in your company. Like, that's important because if you don't, like, your office will be taken from you or whatever. I don't know, whatever it is that you have. But what's significant, something that's significant, it's you spend time doing this thing, but it pays dividends for weeks, months, years in the future. And creating some sort of a formal training process is significant. It kind of sucks, I'll be honest, but the payoff, it just keeps paying for itself over and over again. Now, then if you accept that and you go, okay, great, I accept that that's significant, it's important. But the reality is, I'm never going to sit down and create this 100-page manual. I'm never going to do it. And I say, good, you probably shouldn't, especially as you're growing a company. A new company has no business coming up with a comprehensive manual, because chances are your processes are evolving constantly. And so by the time you finish it, you almost have to start over because it's irrelevant. So what I suggest to people, and you can appreciate this, Danny, and I'm going to talk a little bit ignorantly about this, but basically creating a checklist like a pilot would use before they take off in a plane. Like, it's not this like huge manual that you read every time you leave off the ground, but it's a checklist. Like, you check this, I do this, and then I get the purchase agreement and I send it to title, and then they do a title check, and blah, blah, blah. Like, just a checklist of things that have to happen in your company without an incredible amount of detail. And then what I suggest is, when you hire somebody for that position, you give them the checklist and you kind of fill in the blanks as they go. And once they become familiar with what they're doing, they can flesh out that manual a little bit more, because it's what they do. It's in their sweet spot and that's their job. And so you can have someone help you with it that way. And then you can iterate it as you go and change it. But as an owner, create a checklist, like maybe like an outline of what happens in your company, and don't try to create this monster manual, because we did that in our company and it was completely outdated by the time we got close to being done. And we almost like forgot why we were doing things the way we were doing them at first. And it's a waste of time. It'll never happen. Now, if your company's been around for 20 years and you've had 10 employees for the last 10 and the same jobs and everything's stable, I suppose then you can go ahead and create that comprehensive detailed manual. But for most of us who started within the last 2 or 3 years or whatever, 5 years, and you're kind of changing and growing, and we used to be more into flips and now we're more wholesaling, and now we're doing wholesaling because the market's really hot, so we don't have to do any work to the property, and we're taking them down ourselves and raising money and throwing them on the MLS. Like, my company has changed, probably significantly changed 3 times in the last 5 years. And over the last 10 years, it's changed probably 5 times, right? So checklist, man, just keep it simple, get somebody in the door. Once you find someone who's great and they stick around and there's lasting power there, have them help you start fleshing out that department.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Something that's manageable, right? Because you're right. You could be a thing where if I do this, I've got to do all of it. And then you're not going to do it because you're going to get started. It's going to end up being some empty documents or something that you're never going to get around to.
Nope. You never will. You check it from me. You'll never finish it. If you're like way into that kind of stuff, my guess is most entrepreneurs are not into that level of detail. They're just not. We're just not built that way. Like, we're built to go out and hunt. Like we want to get out there and build and create and make things. We're not good at sitting down for hours and hours and hours at a Word document and just typing away on a keyboard and creating these elaborate videos. Like, it's just not really what we're into, most of us. So if you are, great, do it. But for the rest of us, keep it simple and manageable.
Amen to that. I was wondering what was wrong with me.
What's wrong with us, I guess, because I don't like it either.
Yeah, it is kind of amazing once you start doing the process of putting stuff on paper, though, because it's amazing how much is involved.
Yeah.
I mean, you
Totally.
can think as you're doing it day to day that there's really not all, but man, there is so much that you're operating from, and you're making decisions based on knowledge that you have that
Yep.
is not recorded anywhere. And the power of taking the time to create these, like you said, pays dividends over time, big time, especially
Yep.
when you do get to the point where you have to let somebody go and you're bringing somebody else on. How beautiful is it just to say, here's everything. When you have a question, ask me. That something that you don't see
Yep.
in here.
Yep.
And if you create the culture of having people that will improve those documents and make them living over time, where they feel like they're empowered to do that and they're a part of the decision making.
Totally.
It just creates a nicer culture, even in better teamwork, right?
Absolutely. And if you're starting to build a little bit of a team, right? Like more than one employee, let's just say 3 to 5. It's really take it from me, it's really smart early on to cross train to an extent, because even as you're creating this company, let's just say I'm running a flipping business and I've got 5 employees. Well, chances are they all have their own lane. They're all doing their thing, right? So when someone goes on vacation, guess who gets to do that job? Usually you as the owner, right? So the minute somebody needs a day off or they're on vacation or they're sick, you're constantly jumping back in. And but the practical side of it is it's very difficult to 100% cross train everybody on everybody else's thing. You're not going to do it. And frankly, most people are not good at everybody else's job. So, but to cross train to the point that they can kind of limp through for a day without causing real problems, I think that level of cross training is really, really important, right? So maybe your acquisitions people have a sense of what your dispositions people do. Like they know who the contact at the title company. They're familiar with the properties that you have under contract because they signed most of them, right? So having someone who can at least make a call and keep the ball in motion for a day while someone is off sick, I think that's like next level stuff, because I found myself having to jump back in and do things when somebody was out for some reason, or they quit, or I had to let them go. Like it became a nightmare for me until I found someone to come in and take over that job. So a little bit of, cross training goes a long way, goes a real long way.
Yeah, it's cool. And I would imagine that it also creates better teamwork as well, because then they kind of understand where this other person's coming from when they ask for something, because they kind of know what they're doing, right?
100%. Yeah.
They know how it all kind of goes together.
Yep.
What's your preferred method or medium maybe for documenting processes?
So we usually do them a couple of ways. We'll do a written version that's just like a Google Doc. Like that's really how we do it, with links to Zoom videos that we create that's kind of showing that part of the process. Or if the written word is just, it's a little tough to articulate and really explain it, then we'll have a supplementary video that we just like we just grab a screen recording, do whatever it is we're doing, talk over it, and then just save it and then create that hyperlink inside of Google Docs. So we just use Google Docs, honestly.
Nice.
And for me, I'm a visual person. So if it's something that I'm going to be dealing with, or I have to train somebody, a lot of times I'll create a flow chart using Lucid charts is just what I use, but you could use whatever. I like flow charts. I like to see the yes, no, if then. I like seeing it laid out visually like that. It works better for me. And so I've done that for people that work for me, that it works better for them too. And frankly, one thing we do, this is not something you have to do like day one when you hire somebody. However, it's not bad either, is we do personality assessments. So it can be the DISC, the Colby, whatever it is you want to use. But I think it's important to understand how the person who you hire, and more importantly, maybe someone who reports to you, how they're motivated, how they think, the best way to communicate to them. I think that those self-assessments, or personality assessments, I should say, they're not all telling. They're not perfect. I don't use them exclusively to run my company, but I think they're good supplemental tools, so that if you're dealing with someone who needs more structure, you see that when you bring them in, and you don't just show them the goal line and say, go for it, because they'll fail. They need more structure than that. And then if you bring someone in, like in the disc, if they're a high D, for example, for anyone who knows the disc, they're a driver. Like they will just get the job done, and they don't need a lot of hand holding, and they don't need a lot of structure. Matter of fact, they don't want structure. They want to be able to get to the goal line in their own way. And so you need to back off of those people, let them just run it with it and do their thing. So knowing how people are wired is a huge advantage when you're managing people.
So once you start transitioning your business and you're documenting some stuff, bringing people on, setting them up for success, what then do you do with your time?
So, so as an entrepreneur, let me just start there, not as a real estate investor, but as an entrepreneur, I'm always looking for ways to vertically integrate things into my company or create opportunities that will have some level of synergy with what I'm already doing. I have this, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs have this. I have this, what I'm going to call a healthy paranoia about revenue and income coming and going, drying up, whatever, things happening. So in my business, that means I want leads coming from more than one source, because I'm constantly worried about what if one of the sources of leads or my main source, what if it dries up for some reason? By the way, that happened last year. So what else, what other lines do I have in the water so that my company will not take a humongous hit? Now, as you like scale back as an entrepreneur, I'm always looking at what if one of my companies stop performing the way it's currently performing? What else do I have going on that I can feel good as an individual for my own personal family, that I am not putting every egg in one basket to the extent that I'm taking a huge risk with my family's future, right? Doesn't mean I'm not committed to everything I'm doing. 100% am. But as an entrepreneur, I'm always looking at what I should be paying attention to, whether it's in the market, like what's coming down the pipe that I can position myself for, right? So how do I spend my time? I spend my time steering the boat. I'm not down rowing. I'm not like pulling up the anchor. I'm looking out at the horizon. And as individually of all my companies that I'm a part of, which is, there's not that many, I'm like, it's not 100 companies, but of the couple of companies that I run, I'm looking down the horizon to see how they should be positioning themselves to be most successful in the future, and what other opportunities are out there that will feed into that company or one of the other opportunities that I'm working on. Like, how does this all fit together so that, I'm trying to create generational wealth. I'm trying to create a legacy. I'm trying to do something that's bigger than me, that lasts beyond me, that will take care of my family. It'll take care of my employees' family. And it's not all dependent on my little pea brain to keep it all going. Because if it does, and something happens to me, not only does my family have to suffer the consequences, so does everybody who's associated with me by way of being employed by me. And so this paranoia about keeping everyone going and making sure everyone's taken care of, that sort of fuels me to like not let any of the balls drop.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, if you're, what is the saying? I mean, if you're, working real hard, driving your team to cut down trees in a forest, and if you don't stop to climb a tree to look out to know, hey, we're in the wrong forest, like what, that's the thing. When you're so busy running the company, you don't have the view of what you're actually doing. And then, that can go years, right? With finally climbing one of those trees after 5 years to say, what the hell was I thinking? Like, what was I doing?
And I'd like to say, if you don't mind, you asked me what I do with my time because I'm not in my business day to day. So one of the other things that I'm super, super passionate about, like you've referenced, and you did reference that you and I met a while back. And one of the ways that we got to know each other better was in the 7-figure flipping group. It was a mastermind that we joined, and it changed my business forever. I know that it changed yours too, and changed your mindset and things. But what I've noticed over the last several years, coaching people, talking to people, finding out what it is that's holding them back, what it is that they're struggling with. There's a lot of things I identified that honestly can be distilled down a bit, right? It's always like, if you want to be a doctor, you sort of need to go through several years of training, and that's how you become like a comprehensive, like qualified doctor. But if you wanted to learn the basics, right? I wouldn't want that person operating on me, but you don't necessarily like a nurse, for example, nurse practitioner. They're not a doctor. They don't go through the, several years, but they can do a lot of that. They have a good foundation of what's going on. And I'm probably articulating this weird, but what I've realized is there are fundamental truths in building your business, whether it's real estate or not, but certainly in real estate, there's fundamental truths to what it takes to start that business. And there's fundamental truths to what it takes to scale that up to whatever you want. You said it, not everybody wants to do 100 deals, and that's totally fine. Everybody shouldn't want to have the same goal and want to do 100 deals, but taking it to the next level, whatever that is, going from 2 deals a month to 10, going from 1 to 2, whatever, there's a different level of fundamentals that have to be realized before you can do that. And so what I've been doing for years on my podcast is talking to folks like you, other really, really smart investors, and trying to give value to people by way of interviewing people that are really, really smart and really, really great at what they do. And that's great. And you have over 200 episodes. I've got a bunch of episodes. And what ends up happening is you have so much information there that now if someone came and said, I'm going to listen to Flipping Junkie podcast, how many of those 200 do they have to listen to get all the answers, right? I don't know, not one, but maybe a dozen, maybe 2 dozen to get a lot of really good foundational stuff. So what I've done now is I've put together a very, very, very small, manageable, economical course, for lack of a better word. I hate that word kind of, but a place where people can go. It's 4 weeks, and we absolutely cover the fundamental truths of starting a business, starting a real estate company, what it takes, what does that mean? How do you find deals? How do you find money? How do you structure your business? When do you start hiring? And also for people who maybe have gotten started, but like I did, there was just a glass ceiling there. I didn't know how to get beyond it. I could see beyond it, but I have no clue how to get beyond it. And honestly, I was at that point where I couldn't scale my business at all. And I was running myself ragged. And I did that for like 2 or 3 years until some things broke loose. I talked to someone who had the business that I wanted, and they said, dude, like, here's what you need to do. Like, this is what's keeping you back. And so there are those people too, who just want to get past the one deal every 2 or 3 months, and they want to do a deal a month or a couple deals a month or whatever it is. There's a whole set of fundamental truths that you have to know to do that. And so I've created this place where people can go and get access to me. And it's not like a 10-year thing. Like, it's just for 4 weeks. Like, let's spend time together for 4 weeks and let's get you off and running in the right way, with the right foundation, with the right fundamentals, and teach you some of the things that you're asking right now that you have no idea where to get the answer, or at least get it cleanly and clearly, and maybe have it tailored to you in your situation. Like, where do we go for that? I would have cut my right arm off for that when I first started, because no one would answer my questions. So I've created something to help folks like that. And if they're interested, I'd be happy to tell them where they can go.
Yeah, that's awesome. I like that, because it's not, here's everything you need to go for the next 10 years. It's like, how are you possibly going to execute on all of that? It's cutting it down to, okay, here's the gist of what you need to get to the next level. And you have access to get clarity on anything as you do that. And so I think it's beautiful. It's sort of a, not bite-sized, because that makes it sound like it's just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, it's what you need condensed into the main points, right? The things that you've seen really move the needle. So that's really cool. I like how that is. And, everybody listening, like, I'm not an affiliate for this, but I have you on the podcast sharing that because I think it's a great idea. And, it's not anything I make money from, but I know that it's going to help people. And that's what I'm caring about with, even putting this podcast on every week, when I'm consistent with it, of course. But, so it's really cool. So what, I mean, if anybody's interested, where do they go to find out more about this?
Yep. Thank you for that, by the way. I appreciate the kind words. And like you said, it's just, listen, sometimes I hear this all the time. I just need some answers. Like, I know what I kind of know where I'm at. I just don't know what's next. Right. So that's what it's for. So thank you again. They can go to businessfasttrackblueprint.com. So businessfasttrackblueprint.com. And honestly, it doesn't really matter. It will absolutely benefit you to be involved in this if you're starting and just don't know how to even launch this thing and get it off the ground. What do I do first? And it will help you if you need to go to the next level. It's designed to take where you are and get you to that next point. And honestly, there will be things that we'll cover in this as a new business that you might not need for 6 months, but you will need it in 6 months, right? So I think it's important to be able to see ahead a little bit too. And there are things in here that will not only help you start your business, but there's a mindset around like, how do you grow? We've talked about this extensively over the last couple of hours. Like, what are the things that you have to get through your brain to take your business to the next level? And we're going to cover that too, because the great thing is, Danny, you've talked to so many people. You know, when you're talking to somebody, there are things they need to know that they're not necessarily ready to hear, or they don't even think they need, but they do, because they're missing it. And so that's the kind of stuff that I'm trying to put into this 4-week time that you're with me to give you not only the things you want, but the things you need. So
cool. Is this something that's going to start at a certain date, or is it just available? You get instant access? What is the?
it does start at a certain date. The launch day is June 23rd.
Okay, cool.
So it's soon. And then once that 4 weeks is over, it will be offered again. I just don't know if the price will be the same, and the content will certainly evolve, but I don't know what the price point will be. Right now, it's just super cheap to get in, because I just really just want to get people in, and I want to just provide tons of value. And selfishly, and you know this, Danny, just from launching software and things that you've done, like, you want everyone to succeed who uses your software, but it would be really great if the first people who use it really succeed, because that's just proof of concept, right? So I'm always going to be committed to anybody who comes to me for help. But I really want this first round to be humongous. I want people to have just transformations like crazy. So if you hear this and there's time to get in, check it out. If you're hearing this after June 23rd, still go to Business Fast Track Blueprint, because that's where the next round will be. You'll be able to find the times and days.
All right. You heard Mike. Now is the time. You need to go over to the website. Go ahead and say it again.
businessfasttrackblueprint.com.
Awesome. Head over there. Now is the time to do that. Thanks everybody for listening to the show. Thanks for being on again, Mike. Great information. And like I said, Mike has helped me change my mindset, changed my view of where I was going in the business, where it could be, what was possible, and then helped, as we made that a reality, was there for us to help us do that. So I thank you forever for that. And thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Always fun.
Cool. Keep in touch.
Thanks, man.